All right, today we're going to read chapter 9, The Blue Ones. So, as we left back, Petra's costume had been identified by Calder as a painting called A Lady Riding by Johannes Vermeer. Chapter 9, The Blue Ones. Calder and Petra found 3 other paintings of the woman in the yellow jacket. In one, she was wearing a pearl necklace and looking into a mirror. In another, she was playing a lute. In the third, she was seated at a writing table, and a maid was handing her what looked like a letter. You've never seen any of these before? Calder looked worried. Never. Petra had taken off one of her earrings and was rolling it around on the floor. So how did you dream about something you didn't know existed? I wonder, Petra said slowly, if paintings that float into your mind on their own are kind of like flying frogs or disappearing people. You mean your dream might be part of something bigger? Calder jumped up and got a piece of paper and pencil. He handed them to Petra. Maybe we should start keeping a record of unexplained stuff. Petra ducked her head happily over the paper. Fine, she began with. Charles Fort, Chief Questioner, Philosopher, Guide. Hey, here's something else. Did you know I made that F costume because I was thinking of F for Fort? We'll include that. Calder told Petra about his box, explaining the reason he happened to be looking at the book. I wonder what made me remember that old thing anyway. If it hadn't popped into my mind, I wouldn't have recognized the geographer at Mrs. Sharp's, and then I would never have read about Vermeer or recognized your costume. It's Miss Husset's fault, Petra said, delighted. It all started with her fine sum art assignment. We found it all right. They spent the next 10 minutes trying to figure out what happened when Petra wrote, 1. Calder writes about box with geographer on it, same day that Petra finds low, writes about it, then dreams about woman. Calder and Petra have lunch, talk about Fort. 3. Calder visits Mrs. Sharp and sees geographer, hears about Vermeer. 4. Calder takes book out of library. 5. Petra and Calder make costumes. Petra thinks about Vermeer, Calder thinks about Charles Fort. 6. Halloween. Calder recognizes Petra's costume. Calder was flipping back and forth in the book. This doesn't tell you too much about Vermeer's life. Do you think we should do some research? I've been wondering if there's some kind of secret code that no one's ever noticed before. I mean, why do so many pearls and pens, and why so many pearls, pens, and button things? Good thinking, Petra grinned. And maybe there's some other crazy connection with Charles Fort, Calder went on. Some facts we might be missing. We could look in the high school library tomorrow. Great. Calder stood up and reached into his pocket. He stirred the pentomino pieces around and pulled out one. V for Vermeer. He smiled in a distracted way at Petra, who looked puzzled. And 1 in 12 chance. Think it's a coincidence? On the way to school the next morning, Petra asked Calder about the V for Vermeer business. I told you about the woman. Now you can tell me about these pentominos, and don't say they're just for making rectangles. They help me figure things out, began Calder, who looked sideways at Petra. Promise you won't laugh? Why should I? What could be weirder than my dream? Well, it seems like the pentominos kind of talk to me. I get the feeling that they want to tell me something, and so I'll grab one, and a word will just pop into my head. Petra was looking at Calder with interest. I know, it sounds like a superstitious game. And it probably is, but you're right about Charles Fort. He makes you look carefully at stuff you might have ignored before. I think it's cool. Calder smiled gratefully at Petra. He should have known she'd understand. At 3:30 that afternoon, they were sitting behind a stack of books in the library. So here's them, sitting behind a stack of books in the library. Keep going. Let's begin with dates, okay? Petra, writing in neat purple ink, started a new page with the heading, Facts About Vermeer. Calder looked at the book in front of him. Whoa, Petra, get this. Vermeer was baptized on Halloween in 1632. That's the first fact about his life. Kind of spooky, don't you think? We started writing about him on the same day that his name was first recorded. There are more than 3.5 centuries in between. Here it is, Calder went on. Johannes, son of Rainier, Janitz, and Dinga Baltons. Wait, spellings. Calder paused for a moment while Petra copied the names. He went on. Father was an innkeeper in Delft, but was also a weaver who manufactured a fine satin cloth called kaffe. Vermeer was an innkeeper too, and then an art dealer. Let's see. When he was 21, he married Katerina Bones. Later that year, he was registered as a master painter in the Guild of St. Luke, became a director of the same guild several times, had 11 children. He died in 1675 at the age of 43. Petra was writing madly. Calder turned the page. It looks like he died owning money and that he wasn't really famous until about 100 years ago. Huh. He's mysterious. I mean, everything about his life is. There aren't any records of how he got started or what money his family lived on. Historians don't know where he worked or who the women and men in his paintings were, or whether they were friends or family or what. I read before almost nothing at all is known about him as a person. Calder looked up. That is so strange, don't you think? I wonder if someone destroyed his notebooks or letters. Petra glanced at Calder. It doesn't seem suspicious, and it does seem suspicious and sad, don't you think? These magical scenes that no one will ever know more about. Calder was reading again. You know what else? He only signed some of his paintings. I wonder why. Calder turned the page. I'd never have done that, he muttered under his breath. Let's find out more about the painting in your dream, he went on. Here it is, a lady writing, and it's in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. The thing she's wearing is a morning jacket, and it has white fur on the collar and sleeves. Those big earrings are either some kind of fancy glass or pearls. Can you believe it? The oyster that made those would have had to be the size of a football. That's a quill pen, of course. The same chair with the lion's head knobs turns up in other images, and the same jewelry, furniture, even maps and paintings on the wall. I wonder if this is Vermeer's home. Must have been hard to work with so many kids. Petra was thinking about how noisy just 5 would be. Is anything making sense? Calder asked. Well, there's the Halloween thing. That's a pretty weird coincidence. But is there anything else we're missing? A pattern? Numbers? It seems like there's too much connection here, Petra said slowly. Like Mrs. Sharp knowing about both Vermeer and Charles Fort. You knowing Mrs. Sharp, me reading Mrs. Sharp's book and having the dream right when you were reading about Vermeer, and then the costumes we both made. Do you suppose that ideas overlap like this all the time and people just don't realize it? Maybe. Outside the library, they walked several yards in silence. Calder pulled 2 packages of peanut M&Ms out of his coat and passed one to Petra. Thanks, she said, surprised. What's your favorite? He asked. The blue ones. Hey, how about the blue M&M symbolizes secrecy? We can start a collection and each eat one at special times as a sign of our determination to figure this out. It'll be kind of our own private thing. Hearing himself, Calder stopped. Petra added quickly, it'll represent us, Charles Fort, and Vermeer. Perfect. They decided to save the blue M&Ms in Calder's box and keep it under his bed. Petra would hold on to the notebook. At the end of Harper Avenue, they stopped and both ate an M&M, agreeing that the color blue had a rare and mysterious taste. Our chapter tomorrow will be called Inside the Puzzle. I'll see you then. Bye.